Welcome to Nephi Paints, and in this video I'll be painting a Blood Angel's Terminator. Let's crack in. So I've undercoated the model with brush on primer from the Army Painter. Using my airbrush and Mephiston Red Air from Citadel, I've given the model a few thin coats. Along with the Mephiston Red Air, I've used Vallejo's Flow Improver just to help the paint flow through the airbrush. Being careful not to saturate the model and lose the detail. This is the result after airbrushing. With the base coat down, now it's time to move on to Agrax Earthshade from Citadel. I've given the model one coat of the Agrax Earthshade, trying to avoid pooling if possible, but if it does pool, don't worry too much, you can always dry brush it out later. With the Agrax Earthshade now dry, it's time to give the model a dry brush, and I've done this with Mephiston Red from Citadel. This is just a light dry brush just to bring out some of the detail on the model before moving on to the next stage. Now it's time to darken down the red a little bit, and I've done this with Flesh Tearer's Red Contrast Paint from Citadel. I like to paint this on in a controlled method, so really just taking my time and just apply this to the entire model. Now back to dry brushing. This first coat is Mephiston Red from Citadel. Then the next mix was 50-50 Mephiston Red and Squig Orange, again that's from Citadel. And the third dry brush is pure Squig Orange from Citadel. With the dry brushing step, you can go as heavy or as light as you like, it's just personal taste. If you'd like it to be a bit brighter than the Squig Orange, just change the orange to a brighter one, or just add a little bit of white to the Squig Orange to brighten it up a little bit. After the dry brushing steps, this is what I was left with. Now it's time to add another colour finally to the model, and this is Leadbelcher from Citadel. I've put this on the back vents, the back of his heels, pipes, bolter, sword, and a few other areas around the model. Here I don't paint the sword myself because I was going for another effect, but it failed in the end, so I've ended up painting the sword silver, so you can do that now if you wish, because the final product of the sword will be silver. Now moving on to Abaddon Black from Citadel. This will go on the pipes in his ankles, the joints in his suit, and his shoulder pads, and anywhere else you'd like to paint the black. Okay, before putting the white down in the future, we have to lay a base coat down, and this is the Fang from Citadel. This is an 80-20 mix of the Fang and water, and applied 2 to 3 thin coats of this paint on all the areas that I want to be white. Now to lighten up the Abaddon Black, I've gone with a 50-50 mix of Abaddon Black and Corax White from Citadel, and I've dry brushed this onto the black areas. Just be really careful not to get onto the red. For the piece of leather here, I've gone with Mournfang Brown from Citadel, and this is applied with 2 thin coats. For the rest of the icons around the model, I've gone with Retributor Gold from Citadel, and this is applied with 2 thin coats and a little water. For the purity seal, I've gone with Ushabti Bone from Citadel, and this is applied with 2 to 3 thin coats. Time to give the model another wash, and this is Nuln Oil from Citadel. This is straight from the pot over all the silver areas of the model. For the handle of the sword, this is Caledor Sky from Citadel, and this is applied with 2 coats. This next wash is Agrax Earthshade from Citadel. This is applied to all the gold, silver and the leather of the model. Next step is a quick dry brush of Leadbelcher over all the silver areas. Just be careful not to get it on the other colours. If you do, you'll have to just go back and touch it up. Here I've given the leather a dry brush of Mournfang Brown from Citadel. For all the parts where we painted the Fang earlier, it's now time to give it a wash, and this is Nuln Oil from Citadel. This is painted straight from the pot, and it's given it 1 coat just to bring out all the detail on these areas. Finally, it's time to add the white to the model. So this is Corax White from Citadel. This is painted with a little water just to help the paint flow over the model. Now painting this white on, it's time consuming, so really take your time when you're putting this on. It might require 2, 3, 4 thin coats just depending on the area of painting and the size of it. Just go slowly as you don't want to get this onto the red. It's quite hard to remove once you do get it onto the red. Just go around to all the areas where we've got the Fang and paint this white over the top, making sure not to get it into the crevices of the detail. With the white down, now I can paint the little banner over the chest. This is painted with Retributor Armour from Citadel. Also to paint the skin, I've linked a video here that I've done previously. Okay, after deciding what colour I wanted to paint the shield, I've gone with a base coat of Abaddon Black. Now this is only onto the front of the shield. I haven't gone around the sides, I've left the red there or the back of it. This is painted with 2 thin coats and a little water. With the black down, now it's time to paint half of it with Mephiston Red from Citadel. This is painted with 2 thin coats and a little water. Don't worry if you don't get perfect coverage here, because when we add the checkers in later, we can fix it up then. With the red down, now it's time to map out the checkers on the shield. I've done this with Flash Gitz Yellow, just slowly mapping out where I want the checkers to be, how thick I want them. You won't get it perfect first time, just take your time going back and forward with the yellow and red until you're happy with the result. I've also put a little bit of water in the paint just to help it flow and give me more control where I want the lines to be. With the Flash Gitz Yellow squares down, now it's time to go back to the Mephiston Red. And with these two colours, I'll just go back and forward to try and tighten up the squares until I'm happy. Just one thing here, just make sure you're doing it with water and nice thin coats. You don't want to get too chunky or out of control. And I just go back and forward between the two colours until I'm happy with the shape of the squares. You don't need them to be 100% perfect because we can always tidy up the edges with the highlight step. When I was happy with the checkers, I've made a 50-50 mix of Agrax Earthshade and water and just given the light side of the shield one thin coat just to darken it up a little bit. Now using a 50-50 mix of Abaddon Black and Corax White from Citadel, I'm just highlighting the edges of the shield just to separate the colour a little bit. Dry brushing it here is a bit risky with all our hard work on the checkers, so I've just gone with edge highlight instead. To highlight the checkers on the shield, I've gone with a mix of 80-20 Mephiston Red and Corax White, and for the yellow I've gone with 60-40 Flash Gitz Yellow to Corax White. While highlighting these checkers, just take your time, you don't want to screw up here. If you do happen to make a mistake, just go with the opposite colour. After my failed attempt at trying to paint the sword with another technique, I've gone and painted it silver again. Washed it with Nuln Oil and Agrax as usual, and dry brushed it with Leadbelcher. With the main model done, we can work on the power sword now. Now the effect I've gone for here after my failed attempt is a lightning effect. The first colour here is deep blue from the Army Painter. With the deep blue I've just mixed a little bit of water into the paint to help it flow. And slowly just mapped out the shape and where I want the lightning to be on the sword. With the lightning I've made sure I haven't painted any recognisable patterns. Just slowly mapping it out as I go along. If you do happen to make a mistake, just put a little bit of silver back down and you'll be right to go. Okay, this next colour is a mix of deep blue and ultramarine blue, both from the Army Painter. It's a 50-50 mix. All I do for the rest of the colours of the sword is just slowly paint less and less of the lightning as I go along, leaving the darker colours underneath. It doesn't look like much now, but the results at the end are quite effective. This stage is pure ultramarine blue from the Army Painter, and again just paint less and less. This next colour is a mix of ultramarine blue and crystal blue, both from the Army Painter. This next colour is a 50-50 mix of crystal blue and troglodyte blue, both from the Army Painter. And as I said before, just paint a little bit less each time. This next colour is pure troglodyte blue from the Army Painter. This next mix is a 50-50 of Troglodyte and Electric Blue, both from the Army Painter. This last highlight is pure Electric Blue from the Army Painter. After putting all the effort into the sword, this is the result you're left with. To protect the sword from chipping, I've given it a coat of Lamian Medium from Citadel. Now to add some transfers to the model to give it some detail. Adding the transfers is super easy. All you need is a plate with some water in it, your transfer and an old brush. Cut the transfer out to the desired shape, put it in the plate of water and let it sit there for about 1 or 2 minutes. After the transfer sat in the water for about a minute or so, you'll notice it's starting to separate on its own, and the back of the transfer will go a darker colour. Carefully pick up the transfer and place it in the desired location. Because the transfer sheet's wet, it'll adhere to the model and give you some time to move it around. Then with my brush, I just wet the area of the model I want to place the transfer on. This will help it slide across and make it easier to maneuver around. Maneuver the transfer sheet into place as closely as possible. With your brush and your fingers, just try to separate the back sheet from the actual transfer as carefully as possible. These are very easy to tear, so be gentle. If you're having trouble with the transfer lining up or positioning correctly, just keep adding water to the area and moving it around with the brush. Once you're happy with the final position, let the water dry up fully before you try to seal or touch the transfer again. And just repeat this process with all the transfers you want to apply to the miniature. To put the text on the purity seal, I've just used Abaddon Black from Citadel with a little bit of water and put some squiggly lines just to represent the text on the purity seal. Onto the chest plate, I've taken my time to carefully write Baal, the Blood Angel's homeworld, using the same colour. To tidy up the lettering, I've just used Retributor Armour from Citadel. To paint the purity seal, his eye lens and the gem on his shoulder, I've started with Goblin Green from the Army Painter. I've painted everything with a base coat of Goblin Green, and then to add the highlights, I've slowly mixed in a bit of Corax White. So I started off with a 70-30 mix, Goblin Green to Corax White, then a 50-50 mix, then a 30-70 mix, and the last highlight was 10% Goblin Green and 90% Corax White. You can do as many or as few of these highlights as you like. With these little extra bits done, now he's finally ready for the tabletop. Here he is, ready to crush the enemies of the Imperium. Thanks for watching Nephew Paints. If you liked the video, please click the sub button or leave me a like. If there's anything you'd like to see in a future video, please leave a comment in the comment section below, and I'll see you in the next one. Catch ya!